When we get into pre-cal, theta comes into the picture, and that's just so your parents think you're doing something hard, so they start using Greek letters to make it look cool. That's the only reason. That could be an X, that could be a B, that could be a lambda, it could be anything, but they use theta for the angle. And SOHCAHTOA is what we used to do, but we're going to add to it today. So SOHCAHTOA, they want cosine. So I always mark this angle here because that's the angle they want me to find cosine of. Cosine of theta equals adjacent over hypotenuse. And this is where what we did the other day. There's 3 over there. What we did the other day where we rationalized the adjacent to theta is this 15 because it's right next to it and it's not the hypotenuse. Do you guys remember that? Mm-hmm. And the hypotenuse is 15 root 2. So this cancels, and don't put root 2. There's a 1 upstairs that's left because when I canceled the 15, and then I multiply by radical 2 over radical 2, and the answer is radical 2 over 2. The problem's going to ask you for one of 6 trig functions. In geometry, you use 3 trig functions, sine, cosine, and tangent. But now we're going to add 3 more, okay? And so that's what I'm going to do next in a little bit. Now, how do I know adjacent, opposite, and hypotenuse? Hypotenuse is always the guy opposite the right angle. So if you cross the field, that wall there is the hypotenuse. Everybody get that? The opposite is the guy across the field from the angle they're talking about. Right. So that's there, and then the adjacent is the other guy. Right. Okay. So the O means opposite. The H means hypotenuse. The A means adjacent. Okay. So if you're looking at sine of theta would have been opposite over hypotenuse. And tangent of theta would have been opposite over adjacent. The first guy over the second guy. Okay. So this guy wants tangent of theta. And if you remember, tangent is TOA, which is opposite over adjacent. So I'm going to mark theta, and this would be the opposite, and this would be the adjacent right there. So it's going to be, put them where they go. And then we're going to multiply by root 14 over root 14. That's why we did that the other day. So you guys would be pros at that. And it's 5 root 14 over 28. And then you just make sure that this doesn't reduce, and it does not. So that is your answer. If you look at your formula sheet in the top left-hand corner, it tells you who's a reciprocal of who. So the sine, the cosecant, and the sine are reciprocals of each other. Do you see that 1 over sine? Yeah. And then the cosine and the secant are reciprocals of each other. And then the tangent and the cotangent are reciprocals of each other. And I'm going to go over that, so don't worry about it. But they're just the same thing but flipped. So what I always do is I find the original and then I flip it to find the cousin. It's just easier to do that, okay? The way to remember this, cotangent and tangent both have the word tangent in it. They're together. They're cousins. The cosine and the secant and the sine and the cosecant, you're going to hear me say this all year, all semester. The S goes with the C and the C goes with the S. If I were to invent trig all over again, I would flip that so that they would both be with the same letter and it would be easier to remember. But it's not that way. So sine goes with cosecant, cosine goes with secant, okay? All right, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to mark the sides. This is theta, so this is adjacent, this is opposite, and this is hypotenuse, and this is opposite, okay? Who does secant go with? Secant goes with cosine. So let's find cosine of theta, and cosine of theta would be adjacent over hypotenuse. Now all I do for the secant is I put 8 root 10 over 24. I flip the cosine. And then I see if I can reduce it, and I can. This is equal to root 10 over 3, I believe. Okay, so the cousin to cotangent is tangent. So let's find the tangent first. The tangent of theta is opposite over adjacent. But I find the cotangent, it's the reciprocal of that. And I have a radical in the basement. I have to get that radical out of the basement. So it's 7 root 2 over 8. Does everybody understand that this is 2 and you have to multiply that 4 to get 8?